Hi, this is Henry Sanders with another episode of Real Talk. We want to thank our sponsors at Park Bank. Thank you for everything that you're doing. Thank you for our Facebook project and the journalism for helping us and supporting us. Thank you for everything you're doing. If you want more of our content, please go to our YouTube page and find out all of our wonderful, wonderful people who showed up on our show. Today, we have a man who's been in politics for a long time and someone who I've known for a long time, actually. And he is the mayor of Racine, Mr. Cory. Mason, how are you, sir?
Doing great today. How are you?
I'm good. COVID-19 days it's hard to keep up what day is which day, and it's just weird. But I'm good for the most part. I'm good.
Good.
So tell us what's going on with Racine. Tell us about Racine first. I want people to know about Racine and the wonderful city that you are.
Sure. Well, Racine is, in my opinion, the greatest place on earth. It is this amazing town of 80,000 people approximately who live right on the shores of Lake Michigan. We're between Milwaukee and Chicago, and we have this great industrial history. This is a community of people who make things, who invent things, who innovate and work hard. And it's also got a wonderful, long-standing tradition of diversity and people coming from all over the world and different parts of the country to come here to make a life for themselves. So we love everything about Racine. It's, again, fantastic lakefront with a great industrial history, fantastic historic downtown. And maybe the thing that people might know the most about Racine is it's famous for its kringle, which is a great Danish pastry that people enjoy from all over the country now. But it's original to and made famous by the city of Racine.
Yeah. Racine's a great place. I used to come there all the time when I used to box. There was a Golden Gloves. We used to have the Golden Gloves there all the time in Racine. So so I used to come down all the time. So a lot's going on. Tell us about COVID-19. I know you guys, Racine has been hit pretty hard with the COVID-19. And I know you guys have, I think, per capita, some of the highest in the state. I think you have 29 new cases, I think, today, 41 deaths. I mean, right. What's going on with COVID-19 from your perspective in Racine?
Well, I mean, there's a couple things going on. I mean, we are still in the midst of it, right? So even with all the civil unrest that's going on right now around what happened in Minnesota, we need to remind people every day we are still in the middle of this pandemic. So for city of Racine, we've had over 1,200 people test positive for the coronavirus, and most notably, though, of the people who get tested, more than 20% of them are coming back positive. So we know that there's still a lot of community spread. And then the other thing that is really disconcerting about coronavirus here in the city is our African-American and Latinx neighbors make up about 45% of the city's population, but they are almost 85% of our confirmed cases. There's a huge disparity that exists in terms of who's gotten coronavirus. And so we need to be mindful of not only the numbers of people who have coronavirus, but the communities that are being disproportionately impacted by this disease.
Did you say 9% of your population is the Black community and 85% are infected? Is that what you just said?
Yeah, so 45% of our community is African-American and Latinx, but 85% of the positives are African-American or Latinx. So it's a big oversample of the number of people who are infected compared to the breakdown of our community.
Yeah, and that's the state, right? That's going on in the whole state. Why do you think that's so high in Racine? I mean, in Green Bay, a lot of people working at the factory up there. So, but what about for you? Why do you think it's so high in Racine?
I think it's about working people, right? I mean, if you think about, when Safer at Home was in place before the court struck it down a few Wednesdays ago and put us in all this turmoil, you still had people working at grocery stores and working at nursing homes and working in pharmacies and doing all those essential services that needed to be done. I think in working class communities, those are disproportionately jobs that are held by people of color. And we also have a gender gap as well, right? And so, it's about 57% of the cases are women and 43% of the cases are men. So you look at the professions that women are dominant in, whether it's in the service industry or the healthcare industry, it's not a big surprise that the people who've been, driving buses and bagging groceries and doing all those essential things to keep us safe. Many of them, by the way, for a little more than minimum wage, have put themselves at exposed risk to keep the community going for essential services, for food and medicine and other critical services. So it's definitely a disproportionate impact on working class people. The other thing I'll say about it is, if you have one of those jobs, you don't get to call in sick. You don't get sick days, right? So people are being forced to make this decision. If you've got an hourly job and say, well, I don't know if I want to come in. I'm worried about getting coronavirus, or I'm worried I might have it. There's a good chance you don't have health insurance benefits. There's a good chance that you don't get sick days. So for a lot of those hourly workers that are doing essential work, they're at increased risk and at exposure, and also increased risk because they don't have the same kind of safety net that other people do who can call in sick or know that they've got a health insurance policy that's going to cover the cost if they need to go to the doctor.
How are you testing? Do you have like testing sites down there where people can get tested, or how is that going?
We do. I mean, for the longest time, it was just people at the start who were hospitalized and symptomatic. Then it got expanded to people who were symptomatic. But again, in part because of the disparities that we have here and the number of people who are uninsured or underinsured because they can't access Badger Care or don't have employer-based health care, we really made the case to the administration that we needed the National Guard down here just to test everybody. So for the last 2 weeks, we've had over, I think, close to 5,000 tests conducted of people being able to come in at no cost, didn't need a doctor's referral, and they could come in and get tested.
What you said is interesting. 45% of your community is people of color. So that means, as a mayor, you have to lead a very diverse community, which is challenging to lead at all, but especially when there's a lot of different interests, a lot of different backgrounds. And then George Floyd happens in Minneapolis. How are you managing that, being a mayor of such a diverse community? What has been your message to the community about what happened about George Floyd being murdered in Minneapolis?
Yeah, I mean, you said it exactly right. I mean, George Floyd was murdered by a police officer in Minneapolis, and understandably, people are outraged. They are hurt, and it just feels like it's another in a line of these kind of stories that you hear from around the country, where a person of color is killed in some altercation with police officers. And so, we're proud of the community-oriented policing that we do here, but our policing isn't perfect. It's not perfect anywhere. So there's always room to improve. But understandably, people are outraged, and they want to raise their voices in solidarity with others in the community to say, we have got to change policing in this country. So, it is totally appropriate for people to be outraged. And I think everybody's trying to find a constructive way to show solidarity with what happened in Minnesota.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier about how COVID-19, that people are before safer at home, and now people are out protesting, right? So that we don't know the impact of social distance. People are not social distancing when they're protesting. Right. We're not going to know the impact of that probably for a couple of weeks, but there will have to be some impact. But looking at how is the protesting going in Racine? I know you guys had a couple of protests, and I know that you gave a curfew one night too. So how is that going in Racine?
So yeah, we've certainly want to start by saying we understand why people want to raise their voices and be heard, but we're also reminding everyone we are still in the middle of a pandemic that is disproportionately impacting people of color. And so I think some people have a false sense of security that just because they're wearing a mask, that means that they can be close to each other or shake hands or, march next to each other very closely and not put themselves at increased risk. And that is just not the case. So we need to remind people we are still in a pandemic. Everything we've said about social distancing that we said last week before this happened is still true, if not more so this week. So in terms of what's happened here, we've had a Saturday night protest that was, the police knew about, that was completely peaceful. We had a protest yesterday that was peaceful, but the night before last, we had a group of protesters who started at Monument Square, then went down to the police department and had an altercation there. Once we thought that crowd dispersed, some other individuals moved down the street and burned down one of our community-oriented policing houses. And so City of Racine has 6 what are called cop houses, where for 3 decades we've been doing community-oriented policing. These are houses where neighborhood kids can come by and, get lunch in the summertime, or have internet access to do homework after schools. The one that was burned down actually has an anti-trafficking nonprofit that runs out of it. These are houses that are embedded and build relationships with the people in our community, which is ironically, I think, what some of the protesters are advocating and agitating to see more of. And so we announced that an arrest was made in that case today. But obviously, the big news there is, that was done by somebody who isn't from our community. So it's somebody who came in from outside and committed this mayhem on our community, because Thelma Orr is sort of our Rosa Parks here. It was named for African American woman who was really a civil rights leader 40 or 50 years ago. And so when they burned down a house named in her honor, it cut deep in the community. And so we're obviously looking out for that, as people coming from out of town and trying to cause mischief. And we had a number of burglaries and break-ins that same night, the night before last, people breaking into cell phone stores or jewelry stores. I don't think that has anything to do with the people who are protesting and trying to lift their voices around the desire to see more justice in the criminal justice realm and with relationship with police officers. But nonetheless, it's a real concern. So what we're advocating for tonight, because there's another protest that people would like to have, we're actually calling on people at 6 o'clock to take a knee for 9 minutes at their home, and to light a candle for 9 minutes at their home, and to participate virtually, and let everybody know that you're thinking about Mr. Floyd and the injustice that occurred there, and have a bit of silence and reflection, thinking about how things could be and should be differently, and just understanding, as Langston Hughes said a long time ago, why people are tired of waiting for people to be good and decent and kind. I mean, I think that's just that same feeling exasperation is where people are right now. And it's understandable, but we're also in the middle of a pandemic. And if you bring 1,000 people together, we ban mass gatherings for a reason, right? And it's not because we don't want people to express themselves politically. It's because we want to keep people safe. And so we're asking people to do this remotely from their homes. And we've asked the churches to ring their church bells for 9 minutes at 6 o'clock. So you can be outside, you can be a part of something together and have a sense of solidarity without having to pack in closely together and put yourself at risk for coronavirus.
So the person who burnt down the building, was he white, or was she whiter? Was she white?
So they'll make the details on the arrests probably tomorrow, but there's one arrest that's occurred. There's several more to come. They'll have more details on who that person was. The only thing that the police department has said for certain is that it is not a person of this community, but they did indeed make an arrest within 24 hours. And I can tell you from just talking to people in the neighborhood, they were deeply upset by it. And so it certainly has taken on a tone that look, we don't want people coming into our community and damaging community assets. They're actually trying to do good policing and good community work.
Yeah, the only reason I asked, because, at least in Madison, a lot of the protesters, majority of the protesters were white. And we're guessing, we know some of them were from the area, but some of them we think were outside the area. And so we're just curious if that's a theme also. Was that also happening in Racine? And did you quote Langston Hughes?
I did.
Okay, cool. Okay, Mayor. Okay. All right. Well, we wish you the best down there in Racine, and we wish you the best in the protest. I like the idea of a virtual protest. We'll see how it works. Are you nervous about that? Are you hoping that a lot of people will respond?
I mean, honestly, it came about as, I would love to tell you that I just came out of this idea out of my head all by myself, but we had a number of people contact us with this dilemma who were saying, I want to show solidarity with the people who are upset about what happened in Minnesota and police violence in this country. How do I participate? Because I'm still worried about coronavirus and I don't want to get sick. So what do we do? And so we came up with this idea about doing it remotely and letting people participate individually, but still collectively from their front lawns and asking the churches to ring their bells so that everybody can still feel like they're part of something and have a sense of solidarity.
Yeah. And last question, what are you doing for yourself to stay, as I ask this to every leader I talk to, because, COVID-19, there's been so much going on. It's high intensity. And then, George Floyd happens and you're a mayor of a place that's so diverse. What are you doing as a leader to take care of yourself from a mental health perspective, a physical perspective? What are you doing?
I think everybody's trying to remind themselves that this is going to be a marathon and not a sprint. It's going to be a long summer to get through the pandemic, and then the civil unrest that we hope is addressed in a peaceful way. But I think everybody just has to remember that you got to take it one day at a time. And what I have learned in 2020 is whatever your plans for the week might be, you got to be willing to set them all aside, because you never know what curveball life is going to throw at you or the city. And so you got to be nimble enough to be able to deal with those kinds of curveballs.
Yeah. Well, thank you for everything that you're doing. Thank you, Racine. We wish you the best. Hope people stay safe and healthy. And we hope that if they protest in a way that's safe for everyone. And thank you for joining us.
Yeah, no, thank you. Stay safe, everyone.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for joining us for another episode of Real Talk. We will see you next time.